Oh, I know fall is settling right in, but I'm digging in my heels and I'm still using up my summer squash. Now remember, summer squash has nice thin skin that's totally edible, and oftentimes the seeds are edible too, versus the winter squash that has that thick skin. You have to remove that skin because it is not edible. Well, back to my summer squash. I had a couple left that I wanted to use up, and so I'm going to make a dish today that is wonderful for breakfast, but it's also great for dinner, for lunch. And so to prepare my squash, I'm just cutting off both ends. I've already washed it really well, and then I'm just going to chop it up into about 1-inch cubes. Now, I've already done that with about a pound of squash, summer squash. Now, you could use winter squash too, but when I make this dish with winter squash, I usually roast it ahead of time and then just scoop it up, chop it up a little bit and add it to this. Now, before I add this, I want to tell you what I've already been doing here. I have sauteed 1 red onion in a little bit of olive oil. And then when the onion was nice and tender, I added some pureed tomatoes. If you still have some fresh around, puree them in your blender with the skin on. It'll turn out perfectly. I used some canned tomatoes today and just pureed it. And then that's just been simmering a little bit on the stove. Now I'm going to add a little bit of Italian seasoning. Use whatever seasoning you like. If you've got some fresh herbs on hand, chop those up and add those. I've got a little bit of lemon salt that I'm going to add, and a little bit of ground black pepper. And once I stir that in, then I'm going to add my summer squash and let it simmer just for maybe 5 to 10 minutes until the squash is tender. Now, while the squash is simmering on the stove, I'm going to whisk up some eggs. I put 4 eggs in a bowl. I'm going to whisk them up, and I've already grated about 4 ounces of cheese, similar to Parmesan cheese, but you really could use any kind of good melting cheese that you like. Even mozzarella would be good. And once your eggs are whisked up well, then just put in your cheese. And 4 ounces will give you about a cup of grated cheese. And then I'll just set this aside and wait for my squash to get tender. It took about 10 minutes for the squash to get just fork tender. Now I'm going to transfer it to an oiled, I oiled it with some olive oil, casserole dish. I've got my oven preheated to 375 degrees. You can see this is just steaming, but it smells fabulous. And then over the top, I'll just add the eggs that were whipped up with some shredded cheese, spread it over the top, and into the oven it will go. This is a wonderful meal to serve for breakfast with some English muffins, toasted English muffins, and it makes a nice dinner too. You can serve it hot, warm, or even at room temperature. It's delicious. I'm Sue Doden, and I'm all about food.